Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and I'm so excited to finally be able to take you on an outdoor gardening experience. So I had purchased several fruit trees, and I received them in February, and it was way too cold. So I will link a video up above of what I did to protect those while I waited for a good enough day to plant them. Well, the day has finally come, and several of those trees are going to be planted, and I'm going to show you a couple of them. Now, one of the issues that I am having right now is, for the first time ever, deer are decimating my front yard. And they've found several different plants that they love, and they've just eaten them to the ground, and some of them are very disappointing, and let me show you what those plants are. So one surprising thing that the deer have loved are my succulents. They've dug up most of my hens and chicks. Any sedum they've actually eaten to the ground. This one's been covered in snow, but they've been working on the middle of it. They've actually even been eating my ice plant. You can see here where they've been digging it up and eating it. I have a box honeysuckle that they absolutely love, and they've been digging up my pansies. I actually don't have any pansies left because they've dug them all up and eaten them. Luckily, it seems like they've left my hydrangeas alone. Now let me show you what I'm doing to protect the plants that I can protect and that I deem worthy of protection. Now, I don't know if you can see in here, but right in the middle there's a little stick with a ragged end on it. This was my yellowhorn tree, and they found it and they ate the top off of it, and that makes me really sad because these are very rare, hard to find. Luckily, I did find some seeds, and I have some sprouted in my grow room that if I have to replace this one, I will be able to replace it. But we're going to be starting over again. So what I did is I took a tomato cage and some chicken wire, and hopefully this will be enough protection to last until the deer head back up into the mountains. Now, I can't blame the deer for wanting to eat all my plants because we have had so much snow here in Utah that they are actually starving. These poor animals are eating things that they've never eaten before. Let me show you one other plant that they found. This right here is one of my hazelnuts. You can see how they've eaten the top. That's all ragged. They bit the top off of that. But I covered this up with a cage of chicken wire, and I'm hoping that helps. Now, for some reason, they hadn't found this hazelnut and they've left it alone, but I caged this one also just in case. And this is where they've done the most damage. They've come in and around and under my weeping spruce and eaten all the tips off of it. I'm hoping it will recover. We've got all the detritus left on the ground from where they've been eating. I clean up a ton of it every day and just throw it away. They just pull the branches off and eat the ends off of it, so I'm hoping it'll recover. Luckily, it's a tall enough tree that they haven't been able to reach up very high, so it still looks okay, but it is pretty decimated at the bottom. Now, the ground is thawed, and I have this little Shenandoah pawpaw that I want to plant, but I don't want the deer to step on it, and I don't want them to dig it up. I don't want them to eat it, so I'm going to also cover this with a cage. So I've got my little tomato cage, which is definitely big enough because this is just a small plant. And so I'm going to plant this right here. This is where I had my previous pawpaw that didn't make it. So we're going to take a chance and try it one more time. Now, when I plant trees, I never amend the holes. I don't put fertilizer, and I don't amend them because I want the roots to be able to go out and find the nutrients on their own. It's a lot more healthy for little plants like this. The other thing that I do is I try and mulch them really well after I plant them. Now, it's a little too early for me to be mulching, so I will be doing that a little bit later in the season, and I'll take you along when I do that. So luckily, this is a really small pot. It's not going to take a lot of digging. Just chosen my area in relation to my other plants. We're going to dig a hole that's a little wider than the pot, and so I can plant the tree just as deep as it is in the pot. Now, while it's in the pot, I'm going to remove the stake. This tree is really tiny and does not need a stake. It's actually much better to remove the stakes if you're not in a really windy area. Little trees do a lot better if they can learn to tolerate the conditions where they live on their own. So we're going to take this out I'm hoping it's going to be okay because the roots are really dark. I'm seeing a few healthy roots, and it's probably because it's sat in this pot since February in my garage. Now, I didn't water it at all, but it is quite, dang it, I hope it makes it. It is still quite wet. So let's plant this just the same depth as it was in the pot. We're going to put the tomato cage around it. Shove it in as deep as we can get it. Now we're going to take the chicken wire, wrap it around here. And then I'm going to shove the chicken wire up over the top. Let's bring you in a little bit closer and show you what this looks like. Now this isn't very sturdy, but I'm hoping it's sturdy enough to withstand the deer. Now they're not going to be able to reach down inside very easily because we put the chicken wire there and it's kind of scratchy. So I'm hoping this will help deter the deer a little bit just until they move up into the mountains. Now I'm also not going to be watering this plant right now because we've got storm clouds gathering and we've got rain predicted for tonight and the ground is really, really moist. So I'm not going to be watering it yet. Now the next tree that I'm going to plant is this little Nikita's Pride almond tree. Now I had one here before and it did not make it. It didn't even leaf out last year. This is a pollinator from my Bounty almond that is just straight across from this. Now one thing, if you notice, this almond is blooming really, really early. Almonds are pretty hardy. We don't have really heavy freezes coming up, so I'm sure that it'll be okay. But we are taking a little bit of a chance planting it this early, but it's going to do better in the ground than it would in my grow room. So we're going to plant this. Now, it's another one that I'm not going to have to dig a very deep hole, but we're going to plant it as deep as it is in the pot and make the hole a little bit wider than this pot is. I'm also not going to amend the hole for this tree. Now these roots are also looking a little brown. I think they should be okay though. So we're going to tease them out just a little bit. Maybe remove some of this soil. The soil is looking a lot like it was just planted in wood chips. So it's easy to shake off. We have the root flare right here, and I don't see any roots coming out above the root flare. So I think this should be okay. I don't normally remove soil off of my plants, but since this one is just basically growing in wood chips, I figure it would be better. I'd rather have the roots on this plant contacting the native soil that it's going to grow in. Now this is planted no deeper than it was in the pot, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip it. Just take the top off of it to a branch that's pointing outward, and then we're going to leave it. I may take off this lower branch right here just to make sure it's okay. Actually, I'm going to take off all of these lower branches. Because I don't want it branching out that low. So we're going to leave this little branch and we're going to leave the top. Matter of fact, I'm going to take off this little branch too. That way we can have it leaf out. It's going to be about as tall as the other tree is that I have over here, which I'll show you in a second. I'm going to pull off the flower buds because I don't want it flowering right now. And we'll see how it does. Now, because this is another tiny little tree, I think that a tomato cage will work really well for it. Now this cage is a little flimsy, so I think what I'm going to do is use a piece of rebar and stake it in a little bit. Now this little tree is planted. I think it's too deep for the deer to actually get in and get to the top of it. I probably will fold in the wire a little bit just to make sure they can't, but this should be sturdy now, and I think we've protected everything. Now this is my little almond tree. This is the Bounty almond. The Nikita's Pride is the one that will pollinate it, and it is not anywhere near ready to leaf out yet. So it's been out in the cold. I think the Maria's Pride came from a warmer area, and the East Coast did have a warmer winter than we did have here. So I think that's why it's leafing out a little bit early. And we'll be pruning this a little bit later. I just want to make sure we're past the deepest of the freezes. So thank you for coming along with me on this adventure. I really love sharing these things with you. And I'd love to hear how your winter is going right now. Have you been able to get out and plant anything yet? And what are you looking the most forward to this spring? Hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has been helpful to you, please like, subscribe, leave some comments below, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.